tutors, mentors, and the city with your host.com.
The City Tutors presents
Tutors, mentors, and the city
with your host.com.
My name is Kevin.com Brown, and welcome to Tutors, Mentors, and the City. I will be your host, and we're just going to jump right in, okay? Our guest for this episode's podcast is a gentleman who I'm actually meeting for the first time, along with you. So I call him Theodore, and he has a name. He has a name that I'm going to mess up, last name, so I'm not even going to try. I'm going to let him tell us together his last name. So let's give it up for Theodore, y'all. All right. So Theodore, first of all, what do I call you?
So Theodore is my full name. I actually go by Teddy. So I've been offered the opportunity to change my name to something more professional for a long time, but I've stuck with Teddy. It just suits me better. So
when I was thinking about how I refer to you, I was like, do I call him Teddy? Do I call him Theo? Like the Cosby Show? What do I call him? So Teddy, tell all of our viewers your full name, what you do, who you are.
So my name is Teddy Bommarito. That's how you pronounce it, Bommarito. It's it means good husband in Italian, which is a good pickup line. And I am born and raised in New York City. Spent the majority of my career in hospitality, working in and around food organizations and restaurants. Passionate about improving financial performance and refining operations and reimagining equity as it relates to food systems and food equity. And I've been with the City Tutors program for, I think, about 3 or 4 years now, and a part of the City Mentors Advisory Council for perhaps a year plus.
Okay. And born and raised in New York?
Born and raised in New York.
What borough?
Manhattan.
Okay, so and you have an Italian last name. Are you Italian?
I am a self-proclaimed pizza bagel. I have an Italian American dad and a Jewish American mother. So I'm a product of a lot of loud people. Let's just say.
Okay. Okay, because I sense as I hear you speak, I sense a Latino. Where is that? Where am I getting that from?
I don't know. It's maybe there are a lot of there are more Latin people there in Los Angeles. I'm now based in Los Angeles, so I'm closer to Southern. I'm in Southern California now, so maybe it's that. Maybe it's the move away from the East Coast, but no
Okay.
Latin in me.
Okay, so you're born and raised in Manhattan.
You got it.
What's that like? What's it like? I'm from New York, but I'm from the Bronx. Okay. What's it like in Manhattan? You went to public school in Manhattan, a special school? What was the deal?
No, I went to a private school in Manhattan, born and raised in the Upper East Side, went to school in the Upper West Side, lived a pretty privileged life growing up. I would say living in Manhattan for a lot is like living in a bubble. I think that you get used to a certain type of person, and then when you exit that bubble, it's a bit of a shell shock. But I think I think the great part about growing up in a place like New York City, whether it is Manhattan or the Bronx or whatever borough you're from, is that, you see people of all walks of life, all different professions, all different, race, ethnicity, religion, and kind of coming out of there. I think it is a great foundation to get to know people different from you and understand their perspectives and that kind of thing. And that's something that I've held with me, and something that, I try to hold with me wherever I go. Going to college, coming to LA, everywhere I go, when people hear that I'm from Manhattan, it's always a buzz topic because it's so bizarre. It's the type of thing that, and I think a lot of people struggle with it because when you're surrounded by so much privilege, it can kind of screw with you sometimes. And I think that one thing that I try and keep with me is to stay humble and recognize my privilege and recognize that I'm able to do things that other people aren't, but at the same time, not let it make me insecure.
Well, you mentioned a couple of things that I like to tap into. So when I think Manhattan and private school, I think Gossip Girl, right? The TV show Gossip Girl. Private school with the Blazers. Did you go to a school with the Blazers?
So they used to have Blazers. So I definitely went to one of the schools that one of the Gossip Girls guys went to, for sure.
Okay. What was your private school? How long did you go to private school? What college did you go to? All that kind of stuff.
So I went to my private school from kindergarten to 12th grade. The whole time, same 50 guys that went with me. It was an all boys school. Same 50 classmates from kindergarten to 12th grade. Some left, some joined, but for the most part, I think it's a really unique experience to know people from such a young age, because, like at the end of the day, these people are family beyond classmates of mine. And it's interesting because you get to meet them at such a young age, but, regardless of whether perhaps you grow apart in terms of values or what have you, it's kind of like, not that I'm stuck with these people. And obviously a lot of them are, the majority of them are great people, but and I went to Dartmouth for undergrad. So I just went up to New Hampshire, and I love skiing, and I wanted to be somewhere with a campus because I lived up in a city, grew up in a city. So I stayed Northeast.
Okay. That's an interesting story because I grew up in the projects in the Bronx. I'm not a youngin', so I've experienced wealth as an older man. I didn't experience wealth as a youth, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have a grounded edge to you. You seem like a cool, good-hearted, like you mentioned, humble. How'd you get there growing up in that situation?
Yeah, I think well, I appreciate that, but I think that I think the big thing is the way that my parents raised me. I think that nothing in my household was taboo to talk about. I remember a story that my mom tells me now that I didn't remember. And my sister brought up at the dinner table that someone at school, I think she was like 6, was like, asked my sister Katie whether we were rich. And my sister didn't know how to respond to that, and came home and was like, "Mom, are we rich?" And she sat us down and had a conversation that was like, look, we have a lot of privilege in our lives. We're able to do a lot of things that, others don't have, the opportunity to do. But, going around sharing that you have a certain amount of money versus someone else is not something that's appropriate, and I feel like we had those types of conversations from a very young age. And candidly, I've never been a parent in New York City, but speaking, I think I can speak for my parents when I say that nothing's off the table, because people say the craziest things. It's the type of thing of, because people grow up, there's such disparity, right? There's so much wealth, and there's such a lack of it, and it's so close to one another that, you witness a lot of things. But I think all it boils down to is just trying to instill in, I think my parents did a good job of instilling in my sister and me a sense of understanding and appreciating our privilege and where we came from, but at the same time, not flaunting it, and understanding to not take it for granted.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you said you went to an all boys school. Did your sister go to a private all girls school?
You got it.
Okay. And were they like sister schools?
They were. They're probably a dozen all boys and all girls schools in the city. And, they're each kind of, I think they, some end in 8th grade, but, they're all kind of connected. Okay.
So if she went to a similar school, a parallel school, the classmate asked, was she rich? If the classmate was able to go to that school, wouldn't it mean that kid was privileged too, a private school?
No. That girl was privileged. And I think it was more of a question of around, was she similar to her? And I think that it's the type of thing of, people are trying to figure out what's going on around them. Some people have more involved parents, some people have less involved parents, and kind of the conversations that perhaps, happen in different households or in a different topic. But it was definitely not something that we had discussed before. But I think it's a good example of, you're surrounded by a lot of people who perhaps take their privilege for granted.
Okay. Okay. What was your major in Dartmouth?
My major was in Romance language, so Spanish and French.
Okay. Okay. So which one did you pick? Spanish or French, or you learned both?
So I learned both. So one major, you can obviously major in Spanish and you can major in French, but for people who are interested in learning more than one, there's the ability to kind of combine the two and come up with a hybrid type of major. And the quick anecdote is, grew up taking French in my grade school, loved it. I could have placed out of it because of my level of it, but I actually slept through the placement test during orientation week, and the French department would not allow me to retake the test. And there was a language requirement, so I was like, screw it, I've always wanted to learn Spanish. I'm from New York, and a lot of people speaking, I figured it'd be useful in some context. And I grew to love it, and ended up adding French to it, and here I am.
Okay, so I didn't mean to ask. I wasn't going to ask this question, but you just said I slept through the placement test. Do you mean actually like sleep?
Like the alarm went off and it didn't go off loud enough for my.
You read when the placement test happened.
I was comfy in bed during the placement test.
Oh, I'm thinking, man, I showed up at the placement test.
No. It bored me to death. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So you missed the test. So maybe and for college level language, do you graduate being able to speak both languages?
Yeah, so you graduate being able to speak. I wouldn't go as far to say fluency, because I think not living in a place that speaks the language kind of prohibits you from doing that. And I'd say that, I had the ability to study abroad in Barcelona, and that was probably the peak of my Spanish, even though it was earlier on in my college experience. But it's the type of thing now where, give me a couple weeks in a foreign country and, I'll be back to, comfortably conversational at this point, as someone who hasn't put in the time to have a career that uses either language.
Okay. And how long were you in Barcelona? That was a semester, a year?
Just 3 months. Just 3 months.
Maybe that's the edge. Maybe that's the suave thing that I'm from you. They put a stamp in your soul, because I'm sensing some charisma, I'm sensing some. You ever watch Dancing with the Stars?
I've seen it before, but I don't watch it religiously.
So all the male dancers are like very suave, right? Like ladies, the women love all the male dancers, and they have a Latino or a French suave bola coolness. I sense that from you. That's what I get from you.
My fiance, who is actually a professional dancer, would appreciate you saying that. As someone who, I wouldn't go as far as saying 2 left feet, but is not as gifted as she is. But I appreciate that. I definitely will pass that along to her.
I can tell you pulling dancers. I can tell it through the Zoom. I just sense that from you. So that's real cool. So last question about the past. You grew up in privilege, around privilege. Did you grow up with any school chums who went astray, right? Who didn't appreciate the privilege and then turned into a life of, craziness, something that was unexpected for that path, for that ecosystem?
I would say that I definitely grew up a lot. Here's how I would explain it. I think that people who, when they were younger, middle school, upper school, kind of those ages that you're more influenced by other people and more influenced to do things that, could be bully behavior, could be behavior that kind of is, makes other people, put downs, makes other people feel bad. I think those people probably more often than not leaned into things like alcohol or drugs or partying or that kind of thing earlier on than probably is what's healthy, and has led them to maybe have a reckoning of types of saying, hey, I want to pull my life together and get it on a track that I'm more comfortable with. I think the way to answer your question, though, is I would have expected, just not expected, but maybe just anticipated, just because of the pedigree of families and parents that are sending kids to a school like mine, that more would be in, more traditionally corporate, kind of those types of paths. And I'm actually really pleasantly surprised as someone who also did not do that, the kind of breadth of types of careers that people have gone into that might be a bit more creative and might be a bit less obvious coming from that type of education.
Mhm. Okay. So you graduate from college and then do what?
So I graduated from college and I had no idea what I wanted to do. I knew that I didn't want to go into education for Spanish or French or move immediately to a Francophone or a Spanish-speaking country. And as I mentioned, my mom is an investment banker and said, look, if you don't know what you want to do, why don't you give investment banking a try? At the very least, it'll give you a foundation analytically to kind of do a lot of things in your career. So I spent 2 years as a banker, which was an amazing experience. But, I met a bunch of lovely people, worked on a lot of great projects, really intelligent people. But the lifestyle was, unsustainable, long hours, working all the time, that kind of thing. Yeah, but I think that kind of is what drove me. I don't know how I can continue, but it's more so just, and interrupt me if you have a question, but I think the majority of people that go into these banking programs go into investing afterwards. They go into private equity or venture capital or one of these, investing type positions. But I decided that I wanted to go into an operational role. I knew that investing was not right for me, just because if it was somewhat like the culture of a bank, I knew that I'd be grueling, and granted, it might be a more lucrative career. It might not bring as much fulfillment. And as I mentioned, I'm a pizza bagel, and I grew up cooking. I love food. I have so many strong food influences in my life, from my grandpa, my mom's side, to my aunt, to my dad's side, that I wanted to join an organization around food. So I joined a catering startup in New York, where I spent a couple of years helping them.
Okay. So in your journey, did you ever need a tutor or a mentor?
Yeah.
Like, who did you skate through school? Did you have problems with subjects?
So, I mean, I would say that, were there times that I needed a tutor? Absolutely. Was I fortunate to be able to receive that tutoring or mentorship? Well, I guess mentorship is a little different, but tutoring when I need it, 100%, for these standardized tests. Some things came easy, some things didn't. I wasn't one of these kids that things came completely naturally. There were some subjects like language and maybe science that came a little more naturally to me, but stuff like history and English and stuff, my school's strongest department was English. And I think I'm a great writer, but I'm sorry, I think now I'm a great writer, but it was not very easy to stand out either creatively or critically, in terms of an analytical paper versus some of my counterparts.
Okay, so it sounds like your parents were great mentors, advice and counsel and all that stuff throughout your life. Did you have any mentors outside of your parents?
That's a great question. I think earlier on, I'll put it this way, that one of my biggest mentors, and one that I candidly didn't realize was one until later in life, because I think that the way that she carried herself was almost like too profound for me to understand as like a 12-year-old, was my babysitter. As is the case with a lot of these, Manhattan families, I grew up with a babysitter. She was a Bhutanese woman named Sonam, was with my family, taking care of me and my sister from age 1 to age 15. Granted, I didn't need a babysitter at age 15, but she was honestly a second mother, super quickly, and kind of taught me values that I don't think I ever would have had the opportunity to learn growing up in in the concrete jungle that is New York City, like, patience and calm and peace of mind. She grew up Buddhist, and, not, I grew up Jewish, so it's not like she proselytized in any way by her religion, but she always found herself, kind of being with herself and calming me down if I ever freaked out about anything or whatever. And, I think that I carry on. She unfortunately passed away. That's a separate point, but I kind of carry on her spirit with how I hold myself today, of just, if things are going not my way, or if there's an opportunity for me to flare up about something, I kind of think about her and say, hey, no biggie, like, shit happens and you got to move forward, and, don't let yourself. So long way of saying I did have some, but I think that they appear in unique ways.
Okay. So that's the cool thing about you too. Like I sense a cool about you. I sense a humility. I sense a down to earth guy. Now, you mentioned when you went to college, you like skiing, right? What other things did you do for fun?
In college, the biggest thing that I did was I played rugby. I grew up playing tennis, so I'd actually never played we didn't have a football team. My school was literally not even big enough to have a football team. But I didn't, wrestle. I didn't play any other contact sport. And going to college, I knew I wanted to join something, as a way to meet people beyond people who lived with me or people who, were in my classes. And rugby was one of the bigger sports that wasn't a varsity sport. It didn't require any recruitment or anything. It was just for, people who, I think is a good way to put it, is weren't good enough athletes to make any varsity team, but, good enough to kind of want to keep some type of physical engagement in school. So I joined rugby. And at least in college, that was definitely the way that I met some of my best friends to this day. It took up a lot of my time traveling to play and practice, after school every day. Yeah.
Rugby looks tough.
Yeah. It's funny because I think that a lot of people who play it have this like gritty edge, and I just don't have that. Like they had an adult men's league come to market to us to play in New York for those who are going to New York after school for their jobs, to play a couple nights a week. And, I looked around everyone, I was like, who on earth is actually considering doing that? Like, I'm just grateful I scooted out with no concussions. Let's just say that. So
Okay. So what do you do for fun now? What's your thing?
For fun now, I cook. I love to cook. I actually, after I spent time at the catering startup, I went to business school, and during my last term, because it was in the pandemic, it was mostly remote. I tried to look for an in-person activity, and actually got my culinary certificate. So I'm a certified chef, and although I don't do it professionally now, I love to cook as much as I can. I also love to spend as much time outdoors with kind of like, I wouldn't say it's gardening because we don't have like a yard, but it's more so just kind of like, I love the connection between food and growing things and, that type of agriculture. Other than that, I like to ski when I get a chance to do it. I don't get a chance to do it very often, given that it doesn't even rain here, let alone snow. But yeah, I'd say those two things.
So wait a minute now. You have a undergrad degree in languages, in Romance languages. You're a certified chef. Now, you said you went to business school, right? Did you complete that journey?
Yeah, I completed the journey. Yeah, it started in 2019 and then in 2021. So I would say like 9 months out of the 2 years were in person, and then the pandemic hit in March. So It was kind of transitioned online, and by the end, it was predominantly still remote. Some of it was in person, and I was like, what can I do in person that's fun? And I found a culinary program nearby that I enrolled in.
So at business school, what's that, an MBA?
An MBA. Mm-hmm.
So when you when you introduced yourself, you said you're between jobs. If you are so skilled, if you are so talented, you could go and you can go and teach language. You can go into a restaurant and you can become a chef. Open your own business, open a restaurant. You have so many skills, and yet you're unemployed. That has to be by choice. What happened? Say, you know what? I'm getting out of this city. I'm just going to the sunny and find the woman of my dreams. What's that? What happened?
Yeah, I was about to say I'm just living the LA life of just walking around everywhere. Yeah, it's a great question, and probably a question that my dad would appreciate you asking. So after business school, I moved out to LA to join a restaurant group here where I spent a year, half of which kind of rotating in front of house, and then the second half in management, helping them with costing and special projects and that kind of thing. Having said that, I feel like the MBA program really instills in you a sense of not trying to find the perfect job, but really trying to get closer to something that can be a sustainable, fulfilling career for you, because everyone coming in has experiences before, and that's informed why they're there, but also things that they like and don't like and whatever. But the reason why I'm unemployed is I'm trying to really think through what I want to do next. I think I've spent a lot of time. In a lot of instances in my life, I've jumped into new opportunities because not as much as job insecurity, but just more as like I like to be busy, and I have a lot of pressure from those around me doing a lot of interesting and exciting things, and I want to be doing them as well. But oftentimes, not to say I regret any decisions, but oftentimes, I think to myself, hey, maybe if I'd given myself a month longer to look, I could have found something that's a bit better of a fit for me. So I'm really trying to do full diligence on what's next for me, and trying to do something a little more creative in terms of owning my own business or starting my own business. And as much as I'd love to just snap my finger and have a restaurant tomorrow, sometimes it takes a little bit of time. And but having said that, I don't think California is doing me any justice by just having nice weather all the time that I could just walk around and walk by the Walk of Fame or something like that. So
you make me smile. You make me smile. You remind me of my daughter. My daughter is multi-talented, right? She has two relatively successful parents who were in her life the whole time. She has quite a bit of privilege in the sense that I grew up in the projects in the Bronx. We were not wealthy, but I didn't know we weren't wealthy, right? My mother hard to I had 1,000 gifts under my Christmas tree every year, right? Anything that I asked for, I received. And it wasn't until I got a certain age when I looked back and I said, wait a minute, I think we were poor, right? But we weren't as poor as everyone else because I still had 1,000 gifts. My father was in the military, and he made sure I was good. But my daughter is the product of wealth. My daughter is a product of two wealthy parents, two educated parents. So she has a certain amount of privilege also. Now she's multi-talented, and sometimes that sounds like a blessing, but sometimes that's a curse, right? Because you have a tremendous amount of options. And when you fall, you don't fall all the way down. You can trip and you can fall and you can bruise your knee, right? You can get damage from a fall. But there are people in this country that when they fall, it's a wrap. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure.
So I smile when I hear you tell your story. I sense that you're guarded a little bit, right? I sense you're guarded on the comfortability, your comfort in your skin, right? I'm a stand-up comic. I'm an actor. I've had 15 careers in my life. And when my daughter asks me questions, me and my daughter are like this. We and my daughter are real tight. So I'll talk to her straight. I'm shooting straight. I want her to be prepared for all the guys she's gonna meet in her life, right?
Yeah.
So I told my daughter when she was very young. I say this as a joke. I say to all the fathers in the house, it's very important that you start disappointing your daughters at a very early age, so you can prepare them for all the disappointment they're gonna meet when they find these boyfriends and these husbands and these all that. Now I say it as a joke, but I'm kind of serious, right?
Yeah.
But I tell my daughter straight up, girl, you calling me, asking me for the answers. I don't know. We don't know, right? We don't know. We don't know the answers. If we're like your parents and we find a track, we choose the track and we ride that track till, Pops did. He rode that track until, okay, I did it. I won. Let me take a break. He won. But that doesn't mean he was happy. It doesn't mean, finding success on the track doesn't make you happy. But I'm at a point now in my life, and this is all I'm saying to you is going to be cut out, right? But I sense you need to hear this. I'm at a point now where I love my mistakes, right? I love getting it wrong because that's material for me, right? When I make a mistake, I'm gonna make money off that mistake. I'm gonna do 20 minutes of stand-up on that mistake, and I'm gonna cash in on that mistake, right? So what I feel blessed that I found I'm a guy that takes lemons and makes lemonade. And so I say to you, you seem like with your guardedness, you seem like you beat yourself up a little bit. Don't stop beating yourself up and make lemonade, man. That's my advice.
No, I think I have a couple of comments. First of all, I like that phrase because when I think about it, I'm like, I can literally make lemonade. I can serve lemonade at a restaurant. That's the first thing I'd say. Second thing is, I appreciate it. I agree. I think it's something I do beat myself up. My sister took a more traditional path. My parents have questioned every single choice that I've made in my career. And granted, I take their advice with a grain of salt because I appreciate them. And I appreciate that they question me. I don't want them to have unconditional support that is a lie. But I do kick myself sometimes when I'm like a little bit confused as to where I'm going. But at the end of the day, I'm happy, and that's kind of the priceless thing. And then the third comment is I actually just went to I'm not sure if you performed there, but I went to the Comedy Store in West Hollywood.
Oh yeah.
And I went on Thursday, and Leslie Jones came in as like a surprise or whatever. And she had a very similar, granted, this was 2 minutes of her segment. The rest of her segment was, I'm not gonna even get into, but it was like, she was talking about how she gave a little speech about like making mistakes and all that type of thing. It was just very reminiscent of what she said. And I think that when she said it, it kind of resonated. And when you said it, it resonated. So it was the type of thing of like, I was like, where have I heard that recently? It was just last week. So anyway.
Well, I know Leslie. I know Leslie pretty well. She used to perform at my club in the city, and she's super talented. She was talented.
She was out of control.
Yes. Now, and that's the thing about her. But she's hilarious.
Oh my God, she was amazing.
Yeah, she's a beast on that stage. But yes, I did perform at the Comedy Store before. But yeah, man, you have a smoothness to you. I sense the smoothness. It doesn't get, I'm not going to say it doesn't get easier, but you see that logo behind me, the City Tutors. When I applied for the job, they told me after they hired me how they saw my resume and was like, wait a minute, he's applying for this job. I was blessed enough to get to a point in my life where if something doesn't make me happy, I don't have to do it. Right. That's my thing. If you talk crazy to me on Monday, expect my desk to be empty on Tuesday. I'm not gonna say I quit. I'm just not gonna when the alarm rings like you missed that test. When the alarm goes off, I'm just not gonna respond, right? That's my DNA. That's my from childhood. And but I'm at a point now where I tease myself when I make mistakes. I tease myself when I say dumb things. But I'm like the shooter on the basketball court. You know, they say have amnesia. When you a 3-point shooter and you miss every shot in the first quarter, you have no memory of it in the second quarter, right? Because you know you're a great shooter. Just keep shooting. That's what my life. I just keep shooting. I'll tease myself. I'll wake up one in the middle of the night and say, I said the stupidest thing. I put my foot in my mouth and then I start writing jokes about it so I can cash in on it. But yeah, man, don't beat yourself up because you're gonna be searching forever. It doesn't go away when you turn 50. Yeah. It doesn't go away when you turn 60. You're still trying to figure it out, right?
Yeah.
Now maybe in your ecosystem that you grew up with or grew up in, it's different. It's a different dynamic. I respect that. But what made you? City Tutors is a volunteer organization, right? It's people who give back. It's volunteer tutoring, volunteer mentorship. You said you've been attached to City Tutors for a while. What attracted you to City Tutors? How'd you make that thing?
So I think in addition to obviously having a really noble mission in a place where I was at the time and I wanted to have an impact. I think what attracted me initially to the City Tutors was, and I'm a mentor. I don't think I'm smart enough to be a tutor, but what attracted me initially was the potential to have an immediate impact on someone. The type of help that I was offering people was stuff that could be actionable very quickly, whether it was helping with a cover letter, helping with a resume, helping with pre-interview type consults with people looking for jobs. And for me, as someone who had that type of support from my parents who were able to look at my resume or look at my cover letter or whatever, I know other people don't have that type of support. And I know that it's the type of thing that even me spending 30 minutes with someone on a resume could have an immense impact for them that could help their resume or their cover letter or what have you stand out, in a crowd. What's kept me with them? I think it's just that impact. First of all, I get to meet a ton of people, which is amazing. But the second thing is, I think as the program has grown and given kind of my background, specifically in hospitality and food, I have the privilege to meet people who are interested in what I'm interested. At first, I feel like when the program was smaller, you kind of got matched up with people, people would be applying to financial services. And I'd be like, great, I was in that, it's not what I'm in now. But now the type of people that I'm connected with are interested in food, are interested in agriculture, are interested in grocery, things that I kind of speak about on a day-to-day basis. So it's not that the conversation is more fruitful than the earlier ones, but it's a bit more relevant. And when Gary asked me to join the advisory council, I was very excited about it, just because I think that as a young organization, I think there are a lot of low-hanging fruit that can enable the business to have even that much more impact on a city with a ton of people and a lot of job opportunities.
Okay, that sounds cool. Is there? I'm gonna ask you. It's a two-part question, but I'm putting it in packages in one.
Sure.
what's the best advice you ever received? And what's the best advice you would offer to, let's say, your younger self?
That's a great question. The best advice that I ever received was, I was in an internship and I feel like my manager could tell I was frustrated, and, then she tried to just chat it with me about what I was, wanted to do and whether this was the internship I wanted, blah, blah, blah. And she said, the best advice that I can give you is threefold. One, to find a job where you learn something new every day. Two, find a job where you are intellectually challenged. And three, find a job where you work with great people. She was like, if you find a job that meets those three requirements, it may not be perfect, but it's going to really hit a lot of boxes for you. And obviously you can define intellectually challenged in a number of different ways. I think advice that I would give to my younger self, which is kind of akin to one of those three things, is it doesn't really matter what you do as long as you work with good people that support you. I feel like I say that sometimes in interviews, and I caveat it by saying, bear with me on this journey. But I think that, not to say that I'm not driven by a certain type of task or activity or mission, but I am more driven to do my job when I'm working for people that are respectful, are, care about my growth, care about work hard themselves. I could be picking up trash, I could be cooking food, I could be solving cancer. But if I'm working with people that are inspiring and respectful, I think I would be excited to do all three of those things.
Okay, that's really cool. I've asked you a lot of questions. Had a great conversation. What did we miss? What would you like to share that we did not cover?
I mean, we covered much more than I thought we were going to cover, which is great. No, I mean, once again, I think that I'm glad we spoke about the City Tutors. I think the program is amazing. I think the thing that I would just encourage people to do is, once again, this is coming from someone who has the privilege to be able to do what I want to do versus what I have to do, or what, to make ends meet. But I think everyone deserves to do what they love and they're passionate about. And I think that there is a career for everyone, albeit it might be a bit more creative or a bit more, a bit less obvious. But I would just encourage everyone to, really think hard, reflect, and figure out what makes them tick. Because I think, I thought cooking was a hobby, and now I went to culinary school and I've worked in a kitchen and I work for restaurants. I never would have thought that was a career, just because of the way I grew up. But if I'd grown up with my mom being a chef or my dad being a restaurant owner, maybe it would be differently. So I think it's just kind of thinking outside the box.
Well, I tell you, just from the, about an hour that we've talked, when you figure it out, right, I think you're going to be dangerous when you figure it out, right? You have a very wide berth of training. And I'm at a point. You mentioned how you transitioned in business school during the pandemic. So right before the pandemic, I lost my father, and right after the year it started, I lost my mother. And I still haven't handled their estate situations, right? But I mentioned that to say that I had to step up when my father passed. I saw the elevation. I got promoted to the man of the house, even though I have an older brother. I got promoted to the patriarch of the family. And when my mother passed, oh my goodness, because she was that chick. She's she's the boss.
Mm.
But I didn't know how prepared they made me, right? And I bring that up to say, just by speaking to you for this hour, and again, I thank you. I thank you for joining me. I thank you for sharing your story. But I believe, given when push comes to shove, right? When push comes to shove, just from your training, just from your wealth of experiences in, you mentioned internships, right? So you went and put in the work, right? You grew up in success and you had wealthy parents, but you didn't lay back and ride. You missed that. You missed that test. You laid back on test day, but you put in the work. You went and got the degrees, you got the credentials, you got the groundwork, you did the thing. But I think that when it's all said and done, you're gonna step up and be prepared and be everything that your father has been, curious about. I think you got it. I think you got it. I think you're gonna be very dangerous, and you're gonna make them all proud.
I appreciate that, and I want to thank you as well for taking the time. It's awesome to meet you, albeit virtually, but awesome to meet you. And I just appreciate your, it's an added bonus to get, snippets of advice here and there from you, as well as someone who's, accomplished a lot in his career. So it's just a privilege.